Jon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Chris, I'm super excited to be here with you today. I think that we're on this planet to grow. I think we grow best when we help other people grow. And these kind of conversations ideally will help your listeners grow better, smarter, faster to achieve their dreams today and in the future.
That's what this podcast was all about. And that's why we started it, to try and help as many people as possible. Jon, before we get started, who are you? What do you do? And don't talk too much about your history, because I think I'm going to want to dig into that from our pre-recording conversation.
So my name is Jon Ferrara. I'm the CEO of a company called Nimble, nimble.com. Nimble is a relationship manager for individuals and teams to get more out of their connections and conversations. Some people call that CRM. Some people call it contact management. I call it critical to any business success. And I've been doing this kind of thing for quite some time.
So that was one of the interesting points when we were on this chat just before we actually hit the record button. You mentioned to me being at UCLA and buying your first computer. And in fact, not just your first computer, but one of the first computers around for many of your friends as well. Can you tell a little bit about that story? I know it's a bit off tangent, but I really enjoyed it.
You bet. So I grew up watching NASA launch rockets into space. And like every kid my age, I wanted to be an astronaut. My father was a car dealer. He was a #1 Lincoln Mercury and then the first Subaru dealer in California. And I said, I never want to be in sales. I want to be a technologist. And my uncle actually invented radar and microwave at MIT in the 40s. So I had a mentor who was a technologist. So I leaned into that when I graduated high school, and I bought a computer. It was $3,600 back in 1978, which is a lot of money. And it was an Apple IIe. And I poured myself into it. It didn't even have a hard drive or a floppy disk. It had a cassette drive for storage. But eventually I got a floppy disk, and I joined a bunch of other nerds at UCLA Computer Club, where we learned from each other. Because I think this is what life's about, is learning from others and building things on top of other people's shoulders, like what we're doing now. And so I built this friendships and these connections, and really this foundation of love, of the ability to use technology to solve problems, because ultimately computers can solve huge problems. In fact, I'll leave you with this quick story. I got a job at a computer store to work my way through my computer science degree in college. And I would sell these computers, and the local corporations would come and buy them. Rocketdyne was one of the companies down the street from us, and they built the space shuttle engines. And the engineer came in and bought an Apple IIe fully loaded because he wanted to use VisiCalc in order to do his calculations, which was a spreadsheet back then, because he couldn't get the IT people to write code quick enough to basically solve his engineering problems to build the rocket. And this is really what microcomputers did, is they gave us all freedom to chart our own course. And I think it changed history.
And you fast forward to today, and we're all walking around with an absolute powerhouse of technology.
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how much I love the power in this. It's like, oh my gosh. But with power comes stuff, right? I think with power comes stuff. I think we're too much like this, right? And I think that we need to be more like this, right? Because we were talking about that through the pandemic sort of chat we had before we went on camera, and we talked about how disconnected we all are. And I think that it's a double-edged sword. So I think you need to put this down sometimes and actually connect with other people, because I think it's the moment where you're truly present with other human beings that magic happens in the universe.
I couldn't agree more. And this probably brings us quite nicely to a segue to talk about what the episode's actually about, which is the idea of relationships. And for me, CRM, as it's often referred to, can be misunderstood. And you mentioned this very briefly at the beginning when you were introducing yourself. How can people use CRM, and how should people be using CRM to really understand the benefit to a relationship with a customer, with a supplier, with whoever it might be?
Well, let's first off just define what CRM is. CRM is an acronym that stands for Customer Relationship Management. And effectively, all it really is a box. It's a database. And you have inputs and outputs. and you use that database for a purpose. And the purpose is to manage contacts. So that's called contact management. And actually, that is the foundation of CRM, because CRM hasn't been with us forever, kind of, but not really. The term CRM really didn't come into effect until the mid 90s, early 90s. But before that, contact management was the thing people used and talked about with products like GoldMine and Act. And contact management was simply an evolution of the Daytimer, which was an evolution of the Rolodex. And the Rolodex was basically just a storage place for business cards. Because if you're not organizing and managing the contacts that you're connecting to as a business or even as an individual, then you're not effective. Every mom or every family has a Christmas card list, right? They have a database of the connections that that family connects to. Because so ultimately, what CRM is the precious repository for the most important contacts that you as an individual or your business has and needs to connect to. The problem is that most companies just use CRM for salespeople and a little bit of the marketing people, but they don't use it for the whole company. But if the whole company actually touches the constituency that your business touches in order to grow. So it's not just salespeople, it's sales, marketing, customer service, accounting, everybody. And so the mistake most businesses make is they only put leads and prospects and customers in the CRM. But what about vendors? What about PR connections? What about you, right? You're in my Nimble database, but I'm not trying to sell you anything, but you are part of our connections that we make in order to build our business. And so CRM stands for customer relationship management, but it really should stand for customer reporting management, because CRMs today are more for management, and sales reps and other people use other tools for engagement like Office 365 or G Suite, email and calendar and contacts. And we use social for interacting. But the problem is all of those are silos of contacts. So every team member at your company has a separate contact database in Office 365 and G Suite, and every team member has a separate database of contacts in social, but there's no unified contact manager for the whole company. And that's what I think is most critical for any business. And that's why we built Nimble as a relationship manager for the whole company that could be used as a CRM. It could be used as a contact manager, but most importantly, it should be used to manage the most precious asset your business has, the relationships around your business.
So we're talking here about really pulling together everybody you've ever met. Like you said, the real growth happens when you have that great relationship with a client, when you have that great relationship with a vendor or a supplier, because those are the moments where you get more done. You get more out of the relationship. It's a win-win. Everything happens and the kind of magic happens. Most people then are using this wrong, right? Or it's being sold to them in the wrong way. It's kind of a marketing fad tool, chuck everyone in your CRM and automate, bang, bang, bang. We'll just keep sending them emails until they take this action, and then they'll go into a different kind of moment. People aren't maximizing the benefit of having these contacts and the relationship. So what can people be doing better, other than using nimble.com, obviously, but what can people be doing better, especially in smaller organizations?
Well, I think you need to think about the contacts that you already have as your gold, right? And the more investment you make in those contacts, the more gold you get out of the mine. And so I think every business has connections that they could get repeat business from or referral from. And that gold happens to be in your accounting system, because this records everybody you sold to. But most people don't take the names in their accounting system and actually go and nurture those relationships and ask for repeat business and referrals. Imagine if you could take the contacts in your accounting system and put them in a database that enabled you to see who are the most important people, who are slipping away, and how you might be able to engage with them. And so I think that what a business needs to do is to look at the contacts that they already have and put them together, and then organize them, prioritize them, and begin to nurture and engage with them across not just email, because if you want to know the problem with email, can you read the number of unread emails on in my email inbox? Did you see that?
Are you about to cross the 520,000 emails unread?
Yes.
Nice.
520,000. Okay. So sending me an email may not be as effective as possibly walking in my digital footprint across some of the channels that I have conversations and adding value to that conversation so that I see you and engage with you. So you need to be able, as a business, to be able to organize and manage your contacts and then engage with them in an authentic and relevant way, not to close them as business, but to find ways to add value to them. And I think this is sort of a critical philosophy that most businesses don't really quite understand. They think that bagging and tagging customers is the job number one in the company, and that's not. Growing businesses, growing customers is the most important thing that you could do. So people don't buy great products, they buy better versions of themselves. So businesses should stop talking about how great their products are and how great they are. They should talk about how they can make other people great. And I think that sort of change in philosophy of, rather than selling somebody, you're serving them, is really what the difference of Nimble is all about. It's really more about relationships as opposed to bagging and tagging customers. Because if you build pay it forward relationships where you're really growing the people that you're serving, they will not only pick up the phone and call you when they need you, but they'll drag their friends with them. And then you don't even have to market, right? Your customers become your marketers. And it's much more powerful when other people talk about you than when you talk about you. But this really requires a change in philosophy, right? Because sales has become a 4-letter word.
I think what's really interesting, so as an agency, we say, put the social back into social media. And for us, it's one of the biggest things where forget about ads, forget about campaigns, forget about everything else. The basics are, do you interact with people on social media? Before you tell me that social media doesn't work, that you've tried video, that you've tried this, that, the other, are you actually talking to anybody? Because these used to be called social networks. And I really liked it when they were called social networks. Since we changed to social media, people have forgotten that actually LinkedIn, for example, is an incredible place to meet people, to interact with people. Like you said, to add value to another conversation, to be part of a bigger conversation, to get to know people. And I think something that's really been lost because of this digital side of things is people think it's okay to, like the equivalent in a networking in real life event would be running up to somebody and saying, hey, buy this.
Yeah.
Like not saying, hi, I'm Chris, nice to meet you. What's your name? And you say, hi, I'm John. Oh, nice to meet you, John. Oh, it's great to meet. What do you guys do? Like nobody's doing that bit and we've forgotten all about it. And it's, I think it's a hugely problematic side to digital marketing at the moment.
And that is the crux of the problem, is people are basically spraying and praying with content and they're not listening and engaging. Here's the analogy. If you drop a lure out there in the river, and basically there's a digital social river streaming around your business today. And if you drop a lure, which is content that somehow inspires other people about how you might make them better, smarter, faster, which is what you should be doing on a daily basis, giving your knowledge away so that you become a trusted advisor, so that when people think of your products and services, they pick up the phone and they call you. You can't drip content without then listening and engaging, because if you put a worm on a hook and you just leave it sit there, the trout's going to come by and they're just going to nibble at that worm and they're going to eat the worm and go away. But what you want to do is when you get a nibble, you need to bring that relationship in and have a conversation. But you can't have a conversation unless you can see that person, because it's your job to know who that person is. In the old days, we used to go in somebody's office and look at their walls, look at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect, in order to find the commonalities that we share, in order to share those things, to build the intimacy and trust that we need in order to get that person to open up to us so that we can find a way to add value to them. That's the natural course of life. And I think that today, with all the automation, with all the CRMs, basically everything's just a number, and we pound people with this automation, and we're all becoming numb to it. That's why my inbox is like a slaughterhouse. And so I think that the analogy that you just said, like, you just don't go walk into a group of people and say, buy my product, right? Here's the analogy I like to use for social media. It's like a cocktail party. You don't walk into a cocktail party and say, hey, everybody, you want to buy some CRM? You walk in and you check the crowd out, and you find a group that you might want to engage with. And then you go stand next to that group and you begin to listen to the conversation. And then when you find a moment where you might add some value, you add some value to the conversation. And then those people will turn around to you and go, hey, Chris, wow, you seem to know quite a bit about marketing. What do you do? And that's your opportunity to share a little bit about what you do and add some additional value. And that's exactly what social media is like. And I think there's too many people that are basically just blasting out how great they are or their products are, as opposed to sharing on a continual basis, dripping knowledge. I call it the 5 E's of social business: educate, enchant, engage, embrace, and empower. And you share that knowledge in order to engage and embrace people, to empower them and help them grow. And that means you share content across the appropriate channels with the right identity and avatars. And then you listen and engage with the authenticity for adding value to that person. And if you do that at scale, you will have so many leads, you won't be able to manage them. And thereby you need a relationship manager to manage the contacts, which is why I built Nimble, because I started using social media in 2006, 7, and 8. I saw it was going to change the way we work, play, buy, and sell. I started looking for a relationship manager that could connect to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. I found Hootsuite, which allowed me to manage the signals and channels, but it didn't connect the conversations to contacts. And so then I started looking at contact management, Gmail, G Suite, and saw it was broken because email, contact, and calendar are 3 separate tabs, and contacts are separate for every team member. Then I started looking at CRM and saw it was more about management and reporting. And so I said, well, gosh, there needs to be a relationship manager that automatically unifies the contacts you're connecting to across email, calendar, social, and then enriches them people and company data so that I can then have the insights I need to engage. Because if you talk to me on Twitter and I don't know who you are, how am I going to reply to you effectively? But more importantly, how do I reel you out of the stream of Twitter, which is a soft connection, and move it into firmer places like email or LinkedIn or calendar or Zoom, or ideally face-to-face? Because the more digital we get, the more human we need to be, and you need to reel those relationships in. And that's why you need a relationship manager and maybe not a CRM.
I think you're right. And there's way too many companies that rely on CRM as a way to see total number of leads. How many did we close?
Yeah.
And I think that information has its place in understanding your business, understanding your sales cycle, understanding the cost per acquisition. All of those things are important, right? But actually a real relationship with one other person, like whether it's a good customer, for example, and you mentioned this earlier, I think it's like 80% cheaper to get an existing customer to buy from you again, repeat business, than it is to sign a brand new customer. Now, if you let that sink in, instead of, like you said, spraying to try and get leads left, right, and center, nurturing the people that you've already had a deal with, a purchase with, if you're in B2B, a service contract with, those are the people that actually, if you can offer them more value, if you can enhance their business further, the chances are much higher that they'll rebuy off of you if they're happy with your existing product. And therefore you're making more money without the need to go and spend elaborate campaigns and tons of money to try and get new leads generated. Yeah.
And did you know that when you buy a CRM, it's not enough for salespeople. They still need to go out and buy sales intelligence software that will, like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Discover.org, that basically enriches leads with the people and company data you need to engage. That I call that sales intelligence. And then you need a rifle, templated email outreach software like Sales Software Outreach, because salespeople can't use the market automation system. They don't, no marketing manager will give the salesperson access to the market automation machine, but they do need to send emails to clients and engage with them. And ideally they're not manually writing those emails every time. And it would be good if the sales rep knows if the person opened it, clicked it, didn't open it, whatever. And so sales reps need what they call SFA software, Salesforce automation software, or, you know, they need sales intelligence and email template outreach tracking software. And that's really the contact management part of it. And so if you think about it, CRM costs anywhere from $50 to $150 per sales rep per month. And then sales intelligence software is $120 to $25 per rep per month. And then sales outreach software is like $100 per rep per month. So you're spending almost $500 per rep per month on a sales technology stack that the sales rep doesn't even use because it's so complex. You got to hire a sales administrator to use it. And that's why you need a more simple solution that incorporates contact management, CRM, sales intelligence, and templated email outreach software that's affordable, that the average company can use, because the average company can't afford to spend $500 a rep per month, plus a sales administrator to manage and run all that stuff. I just don't see it happening.
You're completely right. And there's a lot of these things that are so overpriced that I think it puts people off even trying. And that's the reality of it. So when you do start to see these prices of $100 per month per user wait, hang on a second. We're never going to use this in a good enough way to make it a viable option, right? Especially for small to mid-sized businesses. So I think that's something that can help people to get back to basics. And I think this is what this whole conversation is about. It's this idea that, again, we are looking at how can you make a better relationship? How can you connect with people on a better or a deeper level? And actually today, we're very lucky. Most people share a lot on their social media channels. So if you're looking to try and understand what a business leader's current interest is or thought process is or whatever it is, if you look at their LinkedIn page, you'll see their challenges, their wins. You'll see what they're interested in, what they're commenting on, what sort of stories they're sharing from the news, whatever it is. But you start to build up a pretty impressive picture, right? Quite quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's your job. It's your job to do your homework before you ever engage another human being or business. But most people don't do it because it's too much work. You have to Google somebody before you engage with them. Then you got to go type that in the CRM. And then you go and engage with them and you're going to go log what you did in the CRM. I think that your CRM should automatically build records for you by going and finding all those profiles and pulling it together, synchronizing the interactions you and the team have had on email, calendar, and social, and then work where you work. Because the biggest cause of failure of CRM is lack of use. And the second is bad data. Lack of use because you have to go to it to use it and you work for it. Bad data because even if you type the data in, it decays so rapidly. So I think that your CRM should work for you by building itself and then work with you where you live, which is in email, which is in social and other business apps. But I'd like to add one more idea. I think that everybody listening to this today should have their own personal CRM, their own personal relationship manager, because I think that your network and your brand are your net worth. Your personal brand and your professional network will help you achieve your dreams in life. But most people don't really do a good job of nurturing their brand or their network. And it all starts when you're in high school or college, where you're building the relationships with their peers and the professors and the internships that you do, all the way to the different jobs that you do and the people that you interact with on your job. And you're going to get hired at your next job based off that brand and that network, yet people don't really manage it properly. They manage their contacts in Google Contacts and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. And ultimately, if you don't unify that into a singular place, then you can't wield it in your engagement as you go through on a daily basis. So you might be listening to this today and you might work for somebody else and they may give you a CRM, they might tell you to use it, but that doesn't prevent you from having your own personal Nimble that is plugged into your browser that you can add contacts or bring contacts out to bear on your engagement in life in order for you to achieve your goals, which ideally are aligned with the business goals. And so if any sales rep or business person relies on marketing for leads or the company for all the tools that they use, I think you're missing the boat. In the early days, people would go out and buy Act and GoldMine for themselves, even though the company had whatever tools that they had, because you're responsible for your success, and you're the one that benefits when you are successful. So you should take ownership of your branding, your network, and go out and start building your own personal CRM.
I can remember 2007, the last job I had before deciding I didn't want to work with anybody else, or for anybody else, I should say. And exactly what you just said. I think I'd requested, it wasn't a BlackBerry at the time. I don't know what it was. Anyway, it was like one of the first semi-smartphones in that generation back in the day before the iPhone released. And literally I had all my contacts in it. I could write emails and stuff, but I had all my contacts. And my job was in sales. I was connected to various different companies, lots of individuals, some of which were very highly placed and whatever else. And the day that I left, it was my personal phone. It wasn't a company phone or anything else. But the day that I left, that phone came with me. And that phone became my initial starting jump off point for my business, which was, right, who are all the cool people that I've met over this period? Who are the ones that I actually gelled with? Who are the ones that would potentially be interested in what I want to do now, which was digital marketing? It was when I set up Social Inc. In 2008. And literally that was my jumping off point. That ability to be able to connect with some of those people that I already had some form of a relationship with, some of those people that I kept in touch with afterwards, checking in with them after the sales process was finished. And those were my first initial clients.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're listening to this today and you don't have an organized set of contacts that you can easily segment and then outreach with a one-to-one or one-to-few email outreach, et cetera, then you're really not utilizing your brand and your network effectively. So today, what you should do is go and Google yourself and see if you show up on that first page. And if you don't, here's a tip. Build a Wikipedia page and cite external citations and build a profile for yourself with avatars, et cetera. In the future, when you Google yourself, you'll show up because people are going to Google you. And so you, number one, start building your brand so that Google finds you, so other people can see you, by building identity in the places where your prospects, your customers, and ideally their influencers are having conversations, and then start adding value in those channels on a daily basis. And then listen and engage with the intent not to sell, but to serve and help those people grow. And then put those names in a database and begin to identify the key ones that matter, and then stay top of mind with them. Because as Chris said, that it takes less fuel to maintain a relationship than it does to build one. A rocket spends the bulk of its fuel getting into orbit. A car spends the bulk of its fuel getting up to speed, but to stay at speed, it's very little effort. So don't let those critical relationships slip. It's really easy if you do the basics and you're organized. And if you do this, you're going to build a network and a brand that's unstoppable, which will help you achieve your dreams, which I hope are aligned with helping other people achieve theirs, because you can get more out of life by helping other people achieve their dreams, and thereby you will achieve your dreams.
I think that's hugely powerful. And I'm going to put my hands up at this point and be completely honest and say, I do a poor job. I'm doing a poor job because I am exactly in the position that you've described. I'm connected to a ton of people for work over the years, one thing or another, on LinkedIn. On Twitter, I have kind of a different group of people, but for different reasons. They're cool and interesting for lots of reasons, and I try and engage as and when I can. Then you can move to Facebook, which is more family, friends, and sort of more personal contacts. I've then got email, which I'm nowhere near where you are, but I was upset because today, so far, I'm at 56 unread emails that I just haven't got round to dealing with, and most of them will end up in the bin probably. And I'm not doing anything with all of this, right? I'm on constant communication and connections with, yourself. This is a perfect example. I run the podcast. Every week I'm having at least one conversation with somebody awesome, and it's quite hard to remember everybody. And sometimes I get the issue of going, oh, wait, hang on a second. Yeah, I want to introduce Jon, for example, too. And you're like, that crap, what was her name? She worked at a company. Hang on a second. And it'll take me a while to kind of dig through either episodes or whatever it is to try and figure that out. So actually, I'm going to put my hands up and say, I need to do better at this. So, and this,
I'm going to solve that for you. I'm going to gift you Nimble, and I'm going to teach you how to use it.
Okay. If we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to showcase that so that we can then share it with everyone on this episode page and in the show notes as well as a secondary video to explain why this is a good idea, because I genuinely, you're completely right. Like, it makes perfect sense as we're talking about it. All the communication and the contacts and the way I communicate with them, it's all spread out everywhere. And that is actually fundamentally a massive problem because, oh, wait, yeah, it was on, I think it was on LinkedIn. No, let me check emails. No, wait, when was my calendar? Oh, what was the
Yeah.
date? And then you never find these things afterwards. So I think that's a huge valuable asset. And like you said, again, you don't know where you're going to be in 2 years' time or 5 years'
Yeah.
time. You might not be
Yeah.
at the same business. You might be in a different industry. It doesn't matter, but you're still going to have connections. And the other thing that I couldn't agree with you more, helping somebody else by being able to connect to people that need each other or that could benefit by meeting each other, that's a huge, huge win. For me, that's as much as signing a new client. I'm happier
It's the
to say,
currency of life. It's the currency of relationships, connecting two other human beings.
absolutely. And we're the first to say to cut, like, to prospects, sometimes we're like that. We're not the right solution for you. But
Mm,
hang on a second, I got an idea. You want to do this? You should have a chat with these guys. And we're
yeah.
okay with that, right? It's not about the personal gain. And invariably, not always, I'll be honest, not always, but invariably, the people that we're referring people to, when it's the right fit, they'll also remember us and vice versa. They'll call us and say, hey, we do PR, but actually, you want to talk to Chris at Social Inc. because they do social media. And that's a
Yeah.
hugely powerful relationship that creates far more cash than any advertising campaign I've ever launched.
Yeah. And I think one of the things you said really struck me, that this is a really big problem. So let's think about how big the problem is. There's 225 million global businesses. Less than 1% use any CRM. Most people's CRM is their inbox or spreadsheets or LinkedIn or whatever. But if there's 225 million global businesses, how many people like you are there in the world? Or like me? People that have to manage their network and their brand in order to achieve their goals in life. So if there's 225 million global businesses, there's literally billions of people like us that should be managing our contacts more effectively. That is a huge opportunity. And the way I see it is that Outlook will never be that for you, because Microsoft can't make Outlook that complex because it has to be dumbed down for the masses to use for email. Google Contacts will never be that for you because they need to keep it simple and dumbed down for people to manage the basic email productivity. So the highway, the foundation of your contact communications and activities, which is going to be probably Google, Microsoft, or Apple iCloud based, or combination thereof, will never be your personal CRM. And so you need to make a decision. Is my network important to me? And the answer should be yes. And if it is, make a decision today to start managing it. Go make an inventory of where are your contacts today and what type of contacts do you need. At Nimble, we connect to editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors, and prospects and customers, and their influencers as well. That's a constituency. That's like a sustainable garden that's around my business, right? And it's not just prospects and customers that are going in a CRM. It's a constituency that goes into a team relationship manager that enables all of us collectively to engage. You didn't connect directly to me when we started this conversation. You connected to one of my team members, and that team member then collaborated on your contact with me in order for me to have this opportunity to have the conversation with you. Teamwork wins games. The basics wins games. We don't do teamwork and the basics as good as we should, but we can, because there's a Dunbar limit. It's basically this English chap. He did a study. You can only manage 100 to 200 people in your head at one time. If you do what we teach you to do, which is build your brand in your network by giving away your knowledge and sharing content and listening and engaging on a daily basis with the intent to help other people grow, you're going to have tens of thousands of contacts, which is great. But you need to invest in nurturing and manage those effectively for you to get the gold that's possible out of the mine.
I couldn't agree more. There's one last thing that I want to ask you about, because we talked a little bit about it before we hit the record button, and you've mentioned GoldMine a couple of times. This isn't your first
Rodeo.
venture Yeah, well, this isn't your first rodeo, and I'm not saying that about age by any means, but it's
That's all
more
right.
about it's more about this idea of the contact management and everything else. This isn't your first time in this space. Can you tell everyone a little bit about, the first go around, as it were, of contact management?
You bet. So kind of rewind back to 1986, 87. This was back in the days of DOS, disk operating system. So there was no Windows. It was essentially business computers were PCs, and they ran DOS. And they basically was command line, kind of old school. And networks really weren't, they were just beginning to happen to share printers and hard drives. And it was about this time that I got a job at a startup in Boston called Banyan Vines, which was a network operating systems for enterprises. And they put me in sales in their Dallas field office and said, go get them. And so what I got pieces of paper that were quote leads, but they weren't really leads. They were phone numbers of IT people at big corporations in my territory. And what I would do is I would cold call those leads, and I'd make notes on the piece of paper, and I put the appointments of people I'm going to meet in my Daytimer, which is a leather-based paper calendar with to-dos and contacts. And then I would do my forecast on a spreadsheet, and I'd communicate with my team with email and pink while you're out slips, which are basically just notations of calls that came in for me. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And because I had a computer science degree, because I worked my way through a Computerland store in college, I knew every software program on the market. And I knew there wasn't a program that integrated email, contact and calendar, and sales and market automation. And so I quit my job and I got together with a college friend of mine, and I designed the original screens and workflow of the application, and he coded it, and we called it GoldMine. So we started that company on $5,000, never took a dime of venture, no bank loans, and grew it to over $100 million a year in revenue and tens of millions of customers. And we did it by influencer marketing. So what we did is we were two kids in an apartment with $5,000. How do you sell people something they don't even know they need? Because networks were there to share printers and hard drives, but there really weren't any network business applications. And we had the first contact manager and CRM before Outlook or Salesforce existed. So how do you sell people something they don't need? Well, you go through the trusted advisor, the person that sold them the network, the Novell reseller. So what I did is I cold called the Novell reseller, and I got them to use it, because people sell what they know and they know what they use. They started to use it, recommend it, resell it. And that's how we got to our first $100,000 a month in revenue. And then Microsoft ate Novell, because Microsoft doesn't innovate, they iterate. They wait for somebody else to build the market, and they come in and it's big enough with their muscle, billions of users and hundreds of thousands of hours, to build something good enough to take over the category. And they built NT Server. And so we basically built GoldMine Enterprise, which required a seat of NT Server, SQL Server, and Exchange Server for every seat of GoldMine, solving the problem of our customers need to scale, the partners need to make more margin, and Microsoft need to sell its crown jewels. And they pushed us to over $100 million a year in revenue. And then I sold that company. I retired when I was 40. I spent 10 years raising 3 kids. And Chris, you have any kids?
No, I don't.
Okay. But I could tell you that if you do have kids, time is the most precious thing that you have with them. And most fathers don't get precious time with their kids, because we're out there hustling, to make a life for them. And I had 10 years of precious time being a present father and husband, and it was amazing. But that also gave me the time to immerse myself in social media and see the promise and the problem and the power. And that's what got me down the road with Nimble.
Jon, thank you so much for this. Where can people connect with you? And I know it's definitely not email, but where can people find you and connect with you?
So Google me, find a channel that you see me on that you feel comfortable with, and reach out to me on whatever channel that you want. My company is nimble.com. If you go sign up for a trial, it's free for 2 weeks. If you like what you see and want to be a subscriber, I'm going to give you 40% off your first 3 months. Use the code JON40 when you subscribe. And please connect with me and tell me how I might blow a little wind in your sails.
I think that couldn't be a better way to end. And thank you so much, because I didn't know you were going to give everyone an opportunity at 40% off. So I will definitely add that into the show notes as well.
Awesome. Chris, it's been a real pleasure to share a conversation about our respective journeys. And I hope that that people found a little takeaway and maybe a little inspiration and maybe even some humor in the chat.
Fingers crossed. Thanks again, Jon.
Thank you, Chris.